Good evening and welcome to today's Tropics for September 25th, 2021. Please note, I'm not a meteorologist, and this video is just a collection of my thoughts and opinions about the storm I'm talking about, and for any decision making, please consult National Hurricane Center or local officials. So today I'm looking at Hurricane Sam, and that's currently in the central Atlantic. It's a very healthy looking tropical cyclone, actually. You can kind of tell by the central dense overcast here. There isn't really a whole lot of bursting. You can see the cloud tops are really like whizzing around the center. So it's definitely a high-end tropical cyclone. It's got a nice clear eye here, decent convection. So yeah, it is pretty strong, and we have recon in there showing it's a bit stronger than the satellite intensity estimates had it at a little bit earlier. Looking at the water vapor imagery, you can see again, yeah, very healthy structure here. A bit of warming recently of the CDO, so it might be weakening a little bit, but generally still very healthy. You can see an upper trough kind of digging down here. This will factor in the steering later. And then there's also a lot of outflow in basically all quadrants. And yeah, the shear is low, so it's definitely healthy looking, and again, the conditions are obviously pretty favorable at the moment. Again, we do have a recon plane in there, and it is finding generally steady state storm at this point. Pressure is around 945 millibars, and kind of staying around there. And it's after a few passes through the eye wall, it's gotten a good idea of what maximum winds are, and it seems it's around 135 knots. So a high-end Category 4 cyclone right now, but right now it's not strengthening or anything too quickly. So we'll see what it looks like later on, because we will not have recon for a little bit, as it's still pretty far out. Even this mission is a little further out than they usually go, and this is kind of more of a research mission right now. So at the moment, we could tell by the water vapor imagery, but conditions are pretty favorable here. You got a lot of that upper level flow that's westerly in the Atlantic subtropics, and that's kind of a holdover from when there's a lot of very slow flow, and you had a lot of upper lows kind of stuck in the flow. You can even see a couple here. You can see kind of a trough axis here, another trough here. So there's a few still there, but generally this is arrested only to the subtropics. There is a bit that gets kind of down in the tropics and further east, but this isn't really affecting where Sam is, and doesn't even get too far south. But in general, at Sam's latitude and a bit north even, really isn't a whole lot of upper level flow. So anything that's kind of in this zone will have low shear, and that's what Sam is in. So definitely shear is not an issue right now, and it shouldn't be for the next few days. Actually, it'll be in a favorable upper level environment. And that will continue for the next few days. You can see kind of a reshuffling in the pattern here, and digging tut low or tut trough here, right here, and that isn't quite affecting Sam quite yet at this point on Wednesday morning, but does set the stage for what's going to happen a bit further down. You can see kind of this ridge axis that it'll be under, and that will allow the low shear to continue for a little bit. The issue is it's only really a ridge. It's not like a closed high pressure, and so you got like light westerly winds, it looks like, perhaps at that outflow level. So there may be some beginnings of some westerly shear as we get into midweek, and perhaps the upper level conditions won't be as pristine as they are right now, and that might be where Sam may peak and then eventually start to get a bit weaker. And then finally, towards the end of that 5-day forecast period, this is Thursday morning, you see it starts really interacting with the tut, and so the upper level westerly winds that are over increase even more, and at this point it'll probably start weakening. As an aside, the Euro model actually has it strengthening a little as it kind of recurves up here, so Unfortunately, we do not have the upper level wind data because there's not really a whole lot of free data for that. But it does appear, I guess, that it has very divergent flow as it comes up here. That's kind of what I'm assuming in this sort of or in these conditions, but that's not what the GFS shows. It shows that getting kind of sheared and not doing a whole lot. So it does seem there may be some divergence in the shear, but the degree of how much and how much it might be able to hold its own, we don't quite know how much that is yet. And even then, like, it's not too important right now because there isn't really any risk of land impacts in the very near future that we can really forecast. So if we've got generally favorable conditions like low shear and warm water, what can bring it down, and what's going to keep it from like trying to intensify more? There is a possibility for some dry air intrusions. It's probably less likely with a stronger storm, and since the air around it isn't so super dry, any sort of dry air intrusion is probably going to be brief at best, and then allow it to probably reorganize later, but that is a possibility that will kind of keep it from intensifying too much. And while the eye wall right now is not really susceptible to eye wall replacement cycles, it was very, very strong and very robust this afternoon, so it's probably not going to have an eye wall replacement cycle in the near future, but it is going to be a major hurricane for the next few days in those low shear conditions. So it's probably going to try to have one eventually, and that will probably stop the intensification trend if that does happen. But it's kind of these two things are relatively low confidence, so it could easily intensify, could perhaps not. We don't really know, and unfortunately, it is coming down to the whim of some rather unpredictable conditions. So it's kind of more of a wait and see sort of thing. As for the steering, right now the flow isn't too strong. You have this upper level trough that's dug down to the northeast of Sam, and that's split the subtropical ridge in two. We've got one over Africa and eastern Atlantic, and another one ahead of Sam. But generally, the flow is not too strong, and this is causing it to slow down a little as it tries to head a bit more poleward. So it is only 9 or 10 knots system speed right now, so it's going rather slowly at the moment. But eventually, we're going to have some of this troughing start to dig down in the western Atlantic right here. And what that's going to do is it's going to try to cause some ridge building further to the east in the Atlantic. So instead of having upper or middle ridge kind of ahead of Sam like there is now, it's going to favor a ridge building more to the north and northeast of Sam, which will mean they'll start getting more coherent sort of steering flow probably by midweek, and that will allow it to start accelerating as it kind of moves northwest and then eventually north and probably recurving. Now, the one thing here, though, is there's some model disagreement, as there usually is about 5 days out. The GFS here has been generally more the northeast and quicker to recurve, and the Euro model has been generally slower to recurve and a lot more southwest. Even just a couple days ago, had it near the Bahamas, but it seems to have corrected away from that, so it does look like there's consensus for it to try to recurve. However, Bermuda and parts of Atlantic Canada do appear that they may see impacts from Sam. However, it's a little bit too early to be looking at this. Looking at the official NHC cone here, you can see it's quite slow moving at this point, and even then it's like going to take 5 days just to get to about 60 degrees west of longitude. So yeah, this is going to be around for a long time, as likely as a strong storm. The good thing is it's going to be gaining latitude generally the entire time. So Yeah, it does seem like, or it does seem very likely that the Lesser Antilles or in Puerto Rico here, and especially like Leeward Islands, they're not going to see major impacts from the storm. You may see like perhaps outer impacts, but generally no major impacts here. It'll be a kind of a nice, picturesque storm to the northeast of these islands. But then after that, we'll have to see what things look like for Bermuda and Atlantic Canada. But again, this is 5 days out, and it's still got a long way to go here. So it's much too early to know what's going to happen there. At this point, just keep your eye on it, but don't be too worried. Worried as there is a lot of time before it'll be in that sort of area. Otherwise, there isn't a whole lot much else to talk about in the Atlantic at this time. If you have any questions, comments about my video, please let me know. Thanks for watching.